So welcome back to the cloudDNA Essential Guide, and in this session we're focusing on next generation cloud scalability powered by Citrix NetScaler. My name's Al Taylor, I'm one of the co-founders at cloudDNA. My contact details along with our Twitter user ID and my blog netscalertaylor.com, where you'll be able to read more about some of the topics, and indeed the scalability features very highly within those blog pages. So thanks again for your time today. It's great to have so many of you along, and let's just set the scene a little bit of where we are so far. If you've had a chance to catch up with our webinars previously, you'll understand how the security, the availability, the performance and the efficiency of our infrastructure can really be managed very coherently by a single NetScaler appliance. Now today we're focusing on scalability and to understand more about why Citrix NetScaler is now the world's most advanced cloud network platform. Just to get us in the feel for this, though, and to get us in the mood, let's just understand where that statement comes from. A versatile platform for service delivery with the best possible performance and reliability and security and visibility. The range of use cases for NetScaler is huge, and that's why we think that it's a good idea to speak to somebody who truly understands the potential of the platform, and we certainly believe we have that credential at cloudDNA. But today we're focusing on the tri-scale technology and other methods by which we can scale our NetScaler investments. So let's take a little dig in there. But first of all, just to make sure everybody's familiar with the product lineup, we need to understand a little bit about the appliances and how scaling relates to these individual devices. So first and foremost, the picture at the bottom of the screen you'll be familiar with if you've joined us on previous sessions. NetScaler MPX hardware is very high performance, application delivery control, with all the features that you'd expect. Virtual appliances offer similar components, but in a virtual appliance to host on your own infrastructure. And the SDX appliances, well, we'll come more into those a little bit later on as well. In previous examples of these webinars, we've seen how capacity can be increased on Citrix NetScalers, but I just want you to understand how these appliances stack up because it's relevant for the next little part of the slide deck. So, NetScaler Triscale. You may have seen lots about this in the press and on the Citrix websites and within all the collateral that Citrix produced. So let's just dig into this a little bit because it's important and it's relevant. How we maximize the potential from our investments, and more importantly, how we manage these future growths that we're anticipating. So Triscale, as the name suggests, gives us three ways by which we can expand the capabilities of our investments. The first and foremost of that is very simple. It's scale up. Now, traditional NetScaler users will understand this from previous versions. Applying a license key to our chosen platform can increase the capacity and subsequently manage more traffic on behalf of our organization. Now, if we're looking at the virtual appliances, this is really simple. A license key can take us from 10 megabits at the entry level right the way through up to 8 gigabits at the top end. And as a result of that, because this is sat on our own infrastructure, our own tin, it's not necessary to worry too much about the hardware in there, although there are limitations. Again, if you need help understanding those, then please reach out and we'll help you with that. So, applying a license key to a virtual appliance allows us to step from 10 megabits right the way through to 8 gigabits for massive scalability of future requirements. But let's look at these MPX and SDX hardware appliances. How does scalability work for those? Okay. So to understand how this works, first and foremost, you need to get a bit of a feel for how the actual platforms are sold. Hardware appliances, although there's quite a vast choice, in fact, now from Citrix, from 500 megabits through to 50 gigabits of throughput, there are actually only a very finite number of physical appliances available. And it's the license key which determines how much capacity that device has. If, for example, you were to purchase the recently added 5550 appliance with half a gigabit of throughput, 500 megabits, it's possible to apply a license key to that device and take it up to a gigabit of throughput. So that means although our requirement today is only 500 megs, in the future we can double that capacity. Now you'll notice from the slides as well that you can see that that can be done on a perpetual basis if we're anticipating that growth to be sustained. Or for those types of organizations that see very seasonal traffic, it's possible to apply that extension of capability in a burst capacity. So in other words, for 90 days, we can increase the capacity of our investments up to that 1 gigabit and down again after that period of time has gone by. And why would we want to do that? Well, okay, not right for every organization, but think about guys in the e-commerce sector, for example, of which there's a couple of you joining us today, this is perfect for taking those seasonal bursts in activity that we see on a website, perhaps around Christmas time and the January sales. But the rest of the year, when the traffic levels are a little bit more manageable, we can drop that investment down and we can drop that capacity down to maximize the efficiency of our investments all the way through the engagement. You'll see some of these other appliances listed here, and this is by no way a full list of the hardware appliances available from Citrix in the NetScaler product range at the moment. But this is a top tip. These are the best buys. We've been involved with NetScaler for quite some time at cloudDNA in our previous roles. Although we're a new business, we're very highly experienced around the platform. And if it was my money, I'd be buying one of these. If you need justification for that, we can talk about that later on. But pay particular attention to those MPX 82, 84, and 8600 appliances. You may well see there's some interesting news about those moving forward over the course of the next couple of months or so. Okay, so we can apply a license key and scale that investment up. What else can we do? Well, again, if you've joined one of our previous webinars, then you'll understand how that NetScaler uses application delivery control to ensure the performance and the efficiency and the security and so on of our applications. Here's a typical example. SharePoint's been rolled out, and now we've got Outlook, and now we've got Lync as well. And often what we'll find in smaller organizations, we'll port all of that traffic straight through that one application delivery controller. But if SLAs are starting to suffer because a run on Outlook is causing issues with Lync service quality, it's quite common that we'll apply multiple devices, multiple application delivery controllers, each of which is specifically tuned to manage the application it's delivering. The problem with this is that we end up in a very similar situation to the days before application delivery control. Now, ultimately from there, we're in a position where we could have multiple application delivery controllers all sat in a rack, and those multiple application delivery controllers kind of look pretty much like these point products used to do. Separate individual devices, all with their own power requirements and their own cooling and their own management overhead. So the better way of going about this is perhaps as if we can find a way of working more efficiently by scaling in. What do we mean by that? Each of these application delivery controllers, rather than having them as a standalone and separate appliance, we can take each of those and install them in one big application delivery controller, for want of a better term. We call that a service delivery controller. And that is exactly the principle behind the NetScaler SDX platform. Very high performance hardware, but with completely isolated virtual instances inside. So you can guarantee the SLAs for each of the applications it's delivering. Great for bigger enterprises, hosting organizations, those with SLAs to manage across their infrastructures. It's a perfect solution for you guys. Again, NetScaler SDX at the moment between 8 and 50 gig of throughput. Keep an eye on that. There's going to be some interesting news in the not too distant future, which is strictly under NDA at the moment, but we'd love to talk to you about it. So we will. Okay, so we've been able to take our MPX appliance and scale up, or scale in this instance, by license key upgrade and turn that physical piece of hardware from a single image as an MPX device through to a multiple image high performance piece of hardware with virtual architecture. So again, rather than having to write out or rip and replace, I can increase the capacity and scale just by license key. This makes life easy, surely. Much, much more easy than it has been previously. Okay, so that's taken care of scale up and scale in, and TriScale has 3, so let's look at scale out. This simple theory is not particularly challenging. We just add more capacity by adding more appliances, and there's nothing new in that. But the key to the difference here is the simplicity by which we can manage this traffic explosion. Let's look at where we're coming from with this and how things are progressing in the world as we see it and as our customers see it today. Mobile work styles and cloud services, whatever those drivers are with your own individual organizations, the information managed by enterprise data centers is anticipated to grow by 50 times over the course of the next decade, according to IDC. Now, every organization is different, but if you're a small organization and 10% growth or 10 times growth, similar principles to a larger organization with 10% or 10 times growth, you've still got the same problems, you're just starting from a smaller baseline. So how does this kind of work out for us? Well, traditionally, to manage that additional capacity, we either had to go down the old school rip and replace, or the affectionately known forklift truck exercise, where we take out our perfectly good investment because we've outgrown its capacity, and we increase the capacity by adding a new appliance. I get rid of my 1 gig throughput device and I replace it with a 2 gig throughput device from my chosen vendor. Big problems for a lot of our organizations that we speak to because this is hugely disruptive. There is a complete break of service while the previous boxes are removed and the new are deployed. It's costly, it's very short lived because we're going to get to a position where we're in exactly the same situation in a very short period of time and need to go through the whole process again. Somebody's working weekends by the looks of things, but hugely risky as well. Once that change base is made, it better work because we've already ripped out what was there. So the whole project management starts to get more tricky and the whole concept starts to get more tricky. So Citrix have seen this. And it also comes down to a fairly common situation. I haven't bought a new car for a little while, but the last time I did, I can't imagine that I would have gone into my chosen motor car dealer and said, thank you very much, I'll take the keys to my new car. And the kindly gentleman said, yep, here's your brand new Range Rover, Mr. Taylor. I do have a thing about Range Rovers. And here's the high availability pair one for when it breaks down. I think the man had gone mad. But this is exactly what we do in the IT industry. Here's a perfectly serviceable appliance which we leave sat doing nothing apart from consuming our budget for IT. There has to be a better way of utilizing this so we can apply this active mentality. Take those HA pair of appliances of active and passive, put them in a live rack. We've got double the capacity from the word go. But as the requirement grows and as more users connect to the service and we have more content that needs to be delivered with those SLAs being hit, then we can add capacity as we need. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, we've shown these as physical appliances, but exactly the same principles apply for virtual appliances. So you very quickly get to a point where you can start to bring this elastic capability to the actual delivery mechanism. We've done it with the server infrastructure. The hypervisor of choice allows us to align a new piece of resource to be able to deliver more content. But if the front end mechanism cannot deliver that because the capacity isn't there, it's a bit tricky. So the ability to add up to 32 appliances in a single cluster gives us this huge capability of expansion and contraction when that requirement has died down. It's eliminating idle resources, which really ticks the box for a lot of organizations we speak to as well. We're spending the money, but we're not getting the benefit. Well, now you are. It gives you a greater capability, better performance throughout, but also takes away that issue of dead resource. Interesting. We've seen some work on this and played with this in the lab and deployed it in a couple of environments. And when you start to look at the numbers at the small end, of course, we can take those 10 megabit virtual appliances and put up to 32 of those in a very flexible rack. But at the opposite end of the scale, if your traffic requirements are considerably larger, then it's possible to cluster up to 32 50 gig appliances into a single cluster, which will manage just a touch over 1.5 terabytes of raw traffic. That's huge. That's carrier grade. And we'll happily discuss that with you if you'd like to understand more about those true capabilities. The beauty of this system, though, is I don't dispute that it's possible to put active clusterings from pretty much every vendor that's out there in the marketplace. But being able to do this from a single cluster IP address, which gives us unified monitoring and configuration, one spot, aggregates the logs and the stats and the traces so it makes it easier to look after. You can probably start to see why this is really taking off for a lot of organizations. And don't forget, if you've got NetScaler already, apply the cluster license and you can upgrade your existing appliances to provide this service. If you'd like to know more about that, how it's priced, how it works out, and how it's driven mechanically, or at least technically, then again, get in contact and we'll help you with that. Okay, so that gives us the ability to run all of these appliances in a stack, manage those larger amounts of traffic. There are a couple of limitations here, but I'm really excited that NetScaler 10.1 is only a short distance away. We normally see the releases of NetScaler around about the late spring, early summertime. We've seen a little bit of information about what's coming in 10.1, but keep an eye on this. This new technology and new feature sets always get a big amount of development in those early years. So I'll be really excited to see what comes out through here. And we will, of course, keep you informed on that through the usual channels. It's not just us that are saying this as well. We're finding huge amounts of organizations love this concept. We stop having this idle resource and dead money and the ability to really bring that flexibility into that delivery stack with the minimum amount of disruption and downtime. Lovely. Okay, so we've got Triscale clicked off quite nicely. And today's session, we've said, is a little bit more about that. There's next generation capabilities in there as well. So let's just take a look at those in the last few minutes of today's session. We're scaling more than just capacity with NetScaler. The capabilities of this platform are really quite extraordinary. With over 2,000 features, the use cases can be so diverse, from a simple single sign-on system for our bring your own device or mobile work styles, right the way through to the most intricate levels of cloud infrastructure from some of the biggest cloud providers in the world. Everybody can find a use for NetScaler. And if you believe it's too expensive, then please again talk to us, because somebody's trying to sell you the wrong appliance. But when we look at NetScaler's capability and the fact that we can expand and contract that capability in terms of the raw volumes of data that are moving through, we can also do similar principles with the actual functionality of the device. When we start out, it might be very simple and we just need to do some load balancing and maybe add a little bit of VPN for our users. But then as we find the service needs to get a little bit more clever and we need to add more facilities in there, we need greater resilience, perhaps we need to offer multiple data center support, or perhaps we need to get into a higher security model with things like application firewall, then we can scale the functionality of our NetScaler investment as well as just the raw capacity. So start small today with what you actually need, and then grow and let NetScaler grow with you as a business or an organization to support the greater numbers of users. So increasing that functionality by license key is also a great feature for many organizations. Today we start with this, but tomorrow the world is our oyster. Take that and add to that the fact that we can then start to look at cloud infrastructures as well. Now, when we're talking about this, we could be looking at capacity and leaning into the cloud to give us additional number crunching resource to support higher user counts or spikes in traffic. Perhaps we need content delivery networks to be able to scale our infrastructure out across the globe to ensure we give the best possible performance to all of our users wherever they may be. Branch offices maybe shouldn't be on there just yet, but there's some interesting words and comments coming from Citrix, which if you keep an eye out on my blog, netscalertaylor.com, we'll be releasing more about this as soon as the NDA is lifted. But with many organizations now looking to support hybrid clouds, not just their own internal infrastructures, but to lean into the cloud to give us those extra components of capacity and content delivery and software as a service, CloudBridge, which is included in the Platinum editions of NetScaler or available as a standalone device, gives us the mechanism to be able to import that content or ultimately just work seamlessly and securely in a transparent and optimized situation, taking our data center and extending its capabilities up through the cloud. When you start to see the capabilities of not just the scaling internally in terms of capacity, but you also then start to see the capabilities of scaling the functionality and the ability to bring cloud infrastructure into that one device, you can start to see why Citrix have really got a product that hits the mark for every type of organization. And for those who think it's too expensive, that entry-level NetScaler VPX appliance is available for, well, less money than the MacBook Pro that I'm talking to you behind today. With security, availability, performance, scalability, and efficiency all taken care of by Citrix NetScaler, you can start to see why we believe it's the world's most advanced cloud network platform. If you'd like to read more about it, cloudDNA.co. Have a look at my blog, netscalertaylor.com. And by all means, then just check out our previous webinars, and our next webinars are available on the clouddna.co/events. But for today, that covers off about the scalability messaging. My name's Al Taylor. My contact details are at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.